The gun felt heavy in Vincent Moretti's hand as he stood outside the small house in rural Pennsylvania. He'd killed 17 men in his 20 years running the Moretti family. This would be 18. Just another job. Just another name crossed off a list. Except when the old man opened the door and looked at Vincent with faded blue eyes, he said 4 words that made Vincent's blood run cold. "Hello, little bird. I've been waiting for you." No one had called Vincent that in 43 years. No one alive knew that name. No one except the man who'd given it to him in a jungle in Vietnam when Vincent was 19 years old and bleeding out from shrapnel wounds. The man who'd carried him 3 miles through enemy territory. The man who'd saved his life. Vincent lowered the gun slowly. "How do you know that name?" The old man smiled, sad and knowing. "Because I'm the one who gave it to you, son. K-San. March 1968. You were screaming for your mother, and I told you to be quiet as a bird or Charlie would hear us. You said you couldn't be quiet. So I said then, be a little bird, one who knows when to sing and when to stay silent." Vincent's hand started shaking. That's not possible. He died. The medic. He died 2 weeks after he saved me. Stepped on a mine. I went to his funeral." "You went to Thomas Mackenzie's funeral. That wasn't me." "I'm James Sullivan. I was the one who carried you. Thomas took credit because—" The old man's voice wavered. "Because I asked him to. I had my reasons." "Why?" "Come inside, Vincent. If you're going to kill me, at least let me tell you the truth first. You owe me that much." Vincent should have pulled the trigger right there. Should have finished the job and left. But his finger wouldn't move. His training, his instincts, everything that made him a cold, efficient killer, all of it failed in the face of those 4 words. Little bird. A name he'd buried with his youth. A name that belonged to a terrified teenager who'd thought he was going to die in the mud. Vincent followed the old man inside. The house was small, clean, filled with the kind of quiet loneliness that came from years of living alone. Photos on the walls. Most were military, Vietnam. Young men in jungle fatigues, cigarettes, and 1,000-yard stares. "Sit," James said, gesturing to a worn couch. "Can I get you something? Coffee? I don't have much else." "I'm here to kill you." Vincent's voice was flat. "I know. The gun kinda gave it away." James moved to the kitchen anyway, started making coffee with steady hands. "You work for the Morettis now, I heard. Started as an enforcer, worked your way up. Don Antonio's right hand. Quite a career." "How do you know that?" "I keep tabs on the boys I saved. There were 12 of you over my 2 tours. I know where all of you ended up. Most died young. Violence, drugs, PTSD. You're one of 3 still breathing." James brought over 2 mugs, sat in a chair across from Vincent. "You turned out different than I expected. You don't know anything about me. I know you were a scared kid from Brooklyn who got drafted and sent to hell. I know you cried for your mother the whole time I carried you. I know you promised God if you lived, you'd be a better man. Looks like you broke that promise." The words hit harder than they should have. Vincent set down the coffee untouched. "If you're really who you say you are, prove it. Tell me something only he would know. You had a tattoo, fresh when you got to Nam, a sparrow on your left shoulder blade. You got it for a girl named Marie. Said it was because she was your songbird. When I asked if she was waiting for you back home, you said no. She'd married your best friend 2 weeks before you shipped out." Vincent felt like the floor had dropped out from under him. No one knew about Marie. No one knew about the tattoo he'd had removed in 1975. No one except, "You're him. You're really him. I'm really him." James sipped his coffee. "Now you want to tell me why the man I saved wants to kill me?" Vincent's training reasserted itself. Emotions locked down. Business mode. "You witnessed something 6 months ago. A meeting in Philadelphia. Between my boss and a federal prosecutor. You were in the wrong place at the wrong time, and now you're a liability. The parking garage. I was visiting my daughter. She works in that building." James nodded slowly. I didn't see anything. Doesn't matter. Don Antonio doesn't take chances. He sent me to clean up loose ends. You're a loose end. So you came here to put a bullet in an old man who saved your life. I came here to do my job. Vincent raised the gun again. I'm sorry. I owe you everything. But I have orders. Orders. James laughed bitterly. You sound like you're still in the military, following orders, not thinking about whether those orders are right. This isn't about right or wrong. It's about survival. If I don't kill you, someone else will. And then they'll kill me for refusing. So you're going to murder me to save yourself. That's the man you became? Vincent's finger tightened on the trigger, then loosened, then tightened again. 43 years ago, this man had risked his life to save a stranger, had carried him through hell, had given him a second chance at living. And now Vincent was pointing a gun at his heart. Why did you save me? Vincent's voice cracked. Why me? There were dozens of wounded. Why did you choose me? Because you were still fighting. You had shrapnel in your chest, your leg was shattered, and you were still trying to reload your rifle, still trying to cover your buddies. I saw that and thought, this kid deserves to live. This kid has something inside him worth saving. You were wrong. Was I? James leaned forward. Tell me, Vincent, in 20 years with the Morettis, how many innocent people have you killed? Vincent opened his mouth, closed it. That's what I thought. You're an enforcer, a killer, but you have a code. You don't hurt civilians, don't touch women or children. I read about you. The Moretti family is brutal, but you're known for being precise, surgical. You don't create collateral damage. How do you know all this? Because I never stopped being a soldier, son. I might be old, but I still know how to gather intelligence. When I saw you in that parking garage 6 months ago, I knew exactly who you were. I knew eventually you'd come for me. So I prepared. Prepared how? James pulled a remote from his pocket, pressed a button. A TV on the wall flickered to life, showing a video feed. Vincent's blood went cold. It was him. Entering the house, gun drawn. The angle was from outside, showing his face clearly. Timestamp, date, everything. I have cameras, 8 of them, all recording to a cloud server. If I don't check in every 12 hours, the footage gets sent to the FBI, the Philadelphia DA, and 3 news stations. You pull that trigger, and you're going to prison for the rest of your life. Vincent should have been angry, should have felt trapped. Instead, he felt something close to admiration. You clever bastard. I learned from the best. Viet Cong taught me that survival isn't about being the strongest. It's about being the smartest. James set down the remote. But here's the thing, Vincent. I don't want to send that footage. I don't want to destroy you. Because despite everything, despite the life you chose, you're still that scared kid I carried through the jungle. You're still Little Bird. And I don't abandon my birds. Then what do you want? I want you to sit down, put that gun away, and let me tell you what really happened in that parking garage. Let me tell you why your boss wants me dead. And then you can decide if following his orders is worth losing what's left of your soul. Vincent should have left. Should have called in a backup team. Should have done anything except what he did. But something in James's voice, something in those faded blue eyes that had seen too much war and too much death, made him holster his weapon and sit back down. Talk. James took a deep breath. 6 months ago, I was visiting my daughter. She's a paralegal, works on the 14th floor of that building in Philadelphia. I was in the parking garage waiting for her when I saw your boss, Don Antonio Moretti, meeting with federal prosecutor Sarah Chen. At first, I didn't think anything of it. Then I heard them laughing, shaking hands. And I saw him hand her an envelope. So Sarah Chen is prosecuting the Castellano family, your biggest rivals. The trial starts in 2 months. And if I had to guess, that envelope contained enough money to make sure the case falls apart. Chen takes the bribe, the Castellanos go free, and the Morettis avoid a war they're not ready to fight. Vincent's jaw tightened. You're lying. Ask yourself why Antonio sent you personally. Why not send a couple of soldiers? Why his most trusted enforcer? James leaned back. Because if I disappear quietly, no one asks questions. But if there's a mess, if there's evidence, it leads back to him and his deal with a corrupt prosecutor. You're not here to kill a witness, Vincent. You're here to tie up a loose end that could destroy your boss's entire operation. The pieces clicked into place in Vincent's mind. Antonio had been cagey about this hit, insistent that Vincent handle it personally. No crew, no backup. Just one clean kill. If what you're saying is true, it's true, and I can prove it. James stood, moved to a desk, pulled out a folder. I've been investigating since that night. Chen's financials. She bought a house in the Caymans 3 weeks after that meeting. Cash, $2 million. Where does a federal prosecutor get that kind of money? Vincent took the folder, flipped through it. Bank statements, property records, photos of Chen at a beachfront villa. You've been busy. I'm old, not dead. And I didn't survive 2 tours in Vietnam by being careless. James sat back down. Your boss is dirty, Vincent. Dirtier than you know. And if you kill me, you're protecting a man who's willing to throw you away the second you become inconvenient. Antonio would never, wouldn't he? James's voice was gentle but firm. How many men have you seen Antonio discard? How many loyal soldiers ended up in the river when they knew too much? Vincent couldn't answer, because James was right. Antonio Moretti was a businessman first, and in business, sometimes you had to cut your losses. What do you want me to do? Don't kill me, obviously. James smiled. Beyond that, I want you to think about who you're really serving. Is it the family, or is it just fear? It's not fear. It's always fear, son. Fear of dying. Fear of being weak. Fear of ending up like your father. Vincent's head snapped up. How do you know about my father? I told you. I keep tabs. Your father worked for the Morettis too. Enforcer, just like you. Died when you were 12. They said it was a heart attack, but we both know it wasn't. Antonio's father had him killed because he was getting too old, too slow, too much of a liability. The room spun. Vincent had always suspected, always wondered, but hearing it confirmed. You don't know that for sure. I know that patterns repeat. Your father died at 47. You're what, 62 now? How much longer before Antonio decides you're too old, too slow, too much of a liability? Vincent stood abruptly. I should kill you for this. But you won't, because I'm the only one telling you the truth. James stood too, moved closer. Vincent, you saved 12 men during your time in Vietnam after I carried you out. You got a Silver Star for valor. You were a hero. Somewhere inside you, that hero is still there. Don't let Antonio Moretti bury him completely. That man died in the jungle. No, he's standing right in front of me, shaking because he knows I'm right, knows he's been living a lie. James put a hand on Vincent's shoulder. You're not a killer, Vincent. You're a survivor who learned to kill to survive. There's a difference. Vincent's phone buzzed. Text from Antonio. Status? He looked at the message, then at James, then at the folder full of evidence, then at his gun. If I don't kill you, I'm a dead man. Then don't go back. Disappear. Start over. You've got money saved, I'm sure. Contacts, resources. Walk away. From the only family I have? They're not your family. They're your prison. James squeezed his shoulder. I'm your family? That scared kid I carried through the jungle, he's my family. And family doesn't abandon each other. Vincent's phone buzzed again. Antonio calling this time. He let it ring. There's a third option. Vincent's voice was cold, calculated. I kill you. Take the evidence, use it against Antonio. Take over the family myself. You could, but you won't. Why not? Because you're not him. You're not your father. You're not Antonio. You're Vincent Moretti, the little bird who survived because someone gave a damn. And that someone is standing here asking you to remember who you really are. The phone stopped ringing. Started again. Vincent looked at it, looked at James, looked at his hands, stained with 40 years of blood. I can't just walk away. They'll hunt me. Let them try. I know a place. Remote. Safe. I've been planning my own disappearance for months. I can get us both out. Why would you do that? Because 43 years ago, I made a choice to save a life. Today, I'm making that choice again. Only this time, I'm not just saving your body. I'm saving your soul. Vincent closed his eyes, saw his father's face, saw Marie, the girl who'd married his best friend, saw the faces of 17 men he'd killed, saw the scared 19-year-old bleeding out in a jungle, crying for his mother, and he made a choice. Okay. The word came out barely a whisper. Okay? Get me out. Get us both out. I'll take your evidence to the FBI. Testify against Antonio. Burn the whole thing down. But after that, I disappear. No prison, no witness protection, just gone. James smiled, and for the first time since Vincent arrived, it reached his eyes. Deal. If you're enjoying this story, please like and subscribe. Your support helps us create more content like this. Thank you. They left Pennsylvania that night. James had a cabin in Montana under a false name, bought with cash 20 years ago when he'd first started planning his exit strategy from a world that kept trying to pull him back in. Vincent brought nothing except the clothes on his back and the gun he couldn't quite bring himself to leave behind. The drive took 3 days. They switched vehicles twice, paid cash for everything, left no trail. By the time they reached the cabin, Vincent's phone had 73 missed calls from Antonio. He turned it off and threw it in a river. No going back now, he said. Never was, James replied. The cabin was small but well stocked. Solar panels, generator, enough supplies to last months. James had been preparing for this for years. I'll contact the FBI in the morning, Vincent said. Use a burner phone. They'll want you in person. I know. I've done this before. James looked at him curiously. Have you? No, but I've thought about it 100 times. Every time Antonio ordered a hit I knew was wrong. Every time I pulled the trigger on someone who didn't deserve it. I thought about walking away. I just never had the courage. You have it now, because you gave it to me, again. Vincent laughed bitterly. Twice in one lifetime. How many men can say that? Not many, and you're going to pay it forward. How? By making sure Antonio and everyone like him faces justice. By testifying. By tearing down the system you helped build. I'll be a rat, a turncoat, everything I was taught to despise. You'll be a man who chose right over wrong. That's called honor, son. They sat on the porch that night, watching the sun set over the mountains. Two old soldiers, scarred by different wars, finding peace in unlikely friendship. Can I ask you something? Vincent said. Why did you really save me that day? The truth? James was quiet for a long time. My son was 19, same age as you were. He died in a training accident 3 months before I deployed. When I saw you lying there, bleeding, scared, calling for your mother, I saw him, and I couldn't let you die. I couldn't lose another 19-year-old kid to this goddamn war. I'm sorry. Don't be. You gave me a purpose, gave me a reason to keep fighting. I saved 11 more after you. Every one of them was my son. Every one of them was a chance to undo what I couldn't fix. Vincent understood. They were both trying to atone for things they couldn't change, trying to save people they couldn't save, trying to be better than their pasts. Thank you, Vincent said, for everything. Thank you for listening, for choosing life over death, for being the man I always knew you could be. Vincent called the FBI the next morning. They were suspicious at first, then excited, then mobilized. Vincent Moretti, right hand to Antonio Moretti, willing to testify in exchange for immunity. It was the biggest break in organized crime in a decade. The trial took 8 months. Vincent testified for 6 days, detailed every crime, every murder, every bribe. every dirty deal. Antonio's lawyers tried to destroy him on cross-examination, called him a traitor, a liar, a man with nothing to lose. But Vincent had the receipts, the evidence, the bodies, and most importantly, he had the truth. Antonio Moretti was sentenced to life without parole. 15 of his top lieutenants went down with him. The Moretti family, which had controlled Philadelphia for 3 generations, crumbled in a single trial. Vincent disappeared the day after the verdict. The FBI wanted him in witness protection, but he declined. He'd made a deal with James, immunity, testimony, then gone. They found each other in Montana 3 days later. The cabin was waiting. The mountains were quiet, and for the first time in 40 years, Vincent felt something he'd almost forgotten. Peace. They lived together for 7 years. 2 old men, healing from wounds that never fully closed, finding purpose in simple things. Fishing, chopping wood, reading, talking about the past without judgment, helping each other remember that they were more than their worst moments. James died in his sleep at 87. Peaceful, quiet. Vincent found him in the morning, a small smile on his face, like he'd finally found the rest he'd been looking for. Vincent buried him on the property under a tree James had loved, said words that felt inadequate but were all he had. "You saved me twice, once from bullets, once from myself. I'll spend the rest of my life trying to be worthy of that." He lived in the cabin for another 6 years, alone but not lonely, at peace but not complacent. And when his own time came, at 75, he died the way James had, quietly, in his sleep, smiling. They found him 3 weeks later, when a hiker noticed the cabin looked abandoned. On his bedside table was a letter, unsealed, addressed to whoever finds this. The letter read, "My name is Vincent Moretti. I was a killer for 40 years. I took 17 lives and helped destroy countless others. I don't deserve forgiveness. I don't expect peace. But I want you to know that, at the end, I tried. I testified. I brought down a criminal empire. And I lived the last 13 years as a good man because someone believed I could be. His name was James Sullivan. He saved my life twice. Once in Vietnam when I was 19. Once in Pennsylvania when I was 62. This cabin, this property, everything I have, I leave to the Wounded Warrior Project. To help soldiers who come home broken like I did. Like James did. Maybe some of them will find the peace we found. Maybe some of them will get a second chance. Maybe some of them will have someone who calls them Little Bird and reminds them that even the smallest creatures can survive if they remember when to sing and when to stay silent. Thank you, James, for everything. I hope I made you proud. Vincent Moretti, Little Bird, 1949 to 2024. The letter was published in newspapers across the country. The story of 2 Vietnam veterans who found redemption in each other went viral. The cabin became a private retreat for veterans struggling with PTSD. The Wounded Warrior Project named it Sullivan Moretti House, a place where broken soldiers could heal, where men who'd done terrible things could find peace, where everyone got a second chance. And sometimes, on quiet nights, hikers would swear they could hear 2 old men on the porch, laughing, talking, one calling the other Little Bird with affection and pride. Ghosts, maybe, or just the wind, or maybe proof that some bonds transcend death, that some debts can never be repaid but can be honored, that some men, no matter how far they fall, can be saved if someone gives a damn. Vincent Moretti came to kill a man. Instead, he found salvation. James Sullivan saved a life in Vietnam, then saved it again in Pennsylvania, then kept saving it every day for 7 years. 2 soldiers, 2 wars, 1 impossible friendship, 1 second chance that changed everything. The end. If this story moved you, please like and subscribe. Share it with someone who believes in redemption. Comment below. Do you think Vincent made the right choice? Thanks for watching. Remember, it's never too late to choose who you want to be. It's never too late to be saved. And sometimes the person you least expect is the one who sees the good in you when you've forgotten it exists. The story didn't end with Vincent's death, because stories of redemption never truly end. They ripple outward, touching lives in ways the original actors never imagined. 3 years after Vincent's passing, a young Marine named David Torres arrived at Sullivan Moretti House. He was 26, missing his left leg below the knee and carrying demons from Kandahar that wouldn't let him sleep. "I don't belong here," he told the counselor his first day. "I'm not like them. I didn't do good things and then bad things. I just did bad things." The counselor, an older woman named Patricia, who'd lost her own son in Iraq, smiled gently. "Read this," she said, handing him Vincent's letter. David read it sitting on the same porch where Vincent and James had spent their final years. He read it 3 times. The third time he cried. "He was a killer," David said when Patricia checked on him. "He murdered 17 people, and he still found peace here?" He found peace because someone saw past what he'd done to who he could be, because someone gave him a second chance, because he chose to take it. Patricia sat beside him. "You think you don't deserve peace, David, but Vincent thought the same thing. So did James. So do most of the men who come through here. The question isn't whether you deserve it, it's whether you're brave enough to accept it." David stayed for 6 months. Learned to walk again, physically and metaphorically. Learned that atonement wasn't about erasing the past, but about building a better future. When he left, he went to college, became a counselor himself, dedicated his life to helping other veterans find the peace Vincent and James had found. He was the first, but not the last. Over the next decade, Sullivan Moretti House helped 347 veterans. Some stayed a week, some stayed a year. All of them left different than they arrived. The cabin became legendary in veteran circles, a place where judgment didn't exist, where your past didn't define you, where two old soldiers' friendship had created something bigger than either of them. In 2031, a documentary filmmaker named Rachel Kim came to do a story on the house. She interviewed veterans, tracked down James's daughter, found court records from Vincent's testimony, pieced together the full story. The documentary was called Little Bird. It premiered at Sundance and won the Audience Award. Suddenly, everyone knew the story of Vincent Moretti and James Sullivan, the killer and the medic, the mob enforcer and the war hero. Two men who should have been enemies but became brothers. The publicity brought money. Donations poured in. The Wounded Warrior Project expanded Sullivan Moretti House into a full campus. 20 cabins, a medical facility, counseling center, job training programs. What started as one old cabin in Montana became a beacon of hope for thousands. But the original cabin remained unchanged, preserved exactly as Vincent had left it. His letter framed on the wall. James's photos still on the mantel. Their stories told to every new arrival. "This is where it started," the tour guides would say. Two men, one impossible choice, one friendship that saved them both. In 2035, something unexpected happened. Antonio Moretti's grandson, Marco, showed up at Sullivan Moretti House. He was 19, same age Vincent had been in Vietnam, and he'd just been dishonorably discharged from the Marines for refusing an order he believed was morally wrong. "My family disowned me," Marco told the counselor. "Said I was a disgrace. But I read about this place, about Vincent Moretti, my grandfather's enforcer, the man who brought down our family. Why did you come here? Because Vincent walked away. He chose right over wrong even though it cost him everything. And I did the same thing. I need to know if it's worth it. If there's life after you burn down everything you knew." They gave him the cabin, Vincent's cabin. For 3 months, Marco lived where his family's greatest betrayer had found peace. Read Vincent's books, walked the same paths, sat on the same porch, and slowly he began to understand. The Morettis weren't his family. They were his prison, just like they'd been Vincent's. When Marco left, he didn't go back to Philadelphia. He went to college, became a social worker, spent his life helping people escape cycles of violence and crime. He never used the Moretti name again. Called himself Marco Sullivan, after the man who'd saved Vincent. Because that, he decided, was the family he wanted to belong to. The family of people who gave second chances. On the 40th anniversary of Vincent's testimony, they held a ceremony at Sullivan Moretti House. Veterans came from across the country. Federal agents who'd worked on the Moretti case. Family members of the 17 men Vincent had killed. That last group was unexpected. They came not to protest, but to pay respects. Because Vincent's testimony had brought down not just the Morettis, but corruption throughout Philadelphia's underworld. And in doing so, he'd ended the violence that had claimed their loved ones. "My brother was killed in a mob war in 1987, one woman said, standing before Vincent's grave. For 20 years, I hated the Morettis, hated everyone involved. But when Vincent testified, when he admitted what he'd done and helped bring them all down, something in me shifted. He couldn't bring my brother back, but he made sure no one else's brother would die the same way. That has to count for something." She laid flowers on his grave. So did others, until Vincent's headstone was covered in tributes from the families of his victims. Forgiveness wasn't about forgetting. It was about acknowledging that people could change. That redemption was real. That even killers could become heroes if they had the courage to choose differently. James's daughter, Elizabeth, spoke at the ceremony. She was 78 now, a grandmother herself, and she'd spent years not knowing her father had saved Vincent. "My father never talked about Vietnam," she said. "Never told me about the men he'd saved, never mentioned Vincent by name. But in his final years, living here with the man he'd pulled from the jungle, he was happier than I'd ever seen him. They gave each other something no one else could. A reason to believe that survival meant more than just not dying, that it meant choosing to live with purpose." She looked out at the crowd. Vincent Moretti killed 17 people. That's a fact we can't ignore. But he also brought down a criminal empire, saved countless lives through his testimony, and spent his final years helping broken veterans find peace. Doesn't that matter? Doesn't choosing to be better count for something? The crowd applauded. Because the answer was yes. It did count. It mattered. Vincent wasn't a saint. Neither was James. They were just two men who'd seen hell and decided to build something better from the ashes. That night, after everyone left, a single figure remained at Vincent's grave. He was an older man, maybe 60, wearing an expensive suit that didn't quite fit the Montana wilderness. "Hello, Vincent," the man said quietly. "I'm Detective Morrison, Philadelphia PD, retired now. I worked the Moretti case back in the day, was in the courtroom when you testified." He crouched down, touched the headstone. "I wanted to hate you. You were a killer. My job was to put people like you away. But listening to you on that stand, watching you dismantle everything you'd built, knowing you were throwing your life away to do the right thing, I couldn't hate you. I could only respect you." Morrison stood, brushed dirt from his knees. "You made my job easier. But more than that, you reminded me why I became a cop. Not to punish bad men, to help good men find their way back from darkness. You found your way back, Vincent, and you helped a lot of others find theirs. Thank you for that." He walked away into the night, leaving Vincent to his rest. The years passed. Sullivan Moretti House thrived. The cabin stood unchanged. The story spread, and sometimes, on very quiet nights, the counselors would see lights in the original cabin even though no one was inside. Would hear voices, laughter. Two old men talking about the past without regret and the future with hope. "You think it's haunted?" a new counselor asked. "No," said Patricia, who'd been there from the beginning. "I think it's blessed. Two souls who found each other against impossible odds, who saved each other when no one else could. Why would they ever want to leave? Do you believe in ghosts? I believe in second chances. I believe in redemption. I believe that Vincent Moretti came here to kill a man and instead found himself. Everything else is just details. And perhaps that was the real legacy of Sullivan Moretti House. Not the cabins or the programs or the hundreds of lives changed, but the fundamental belief that no one was beyond saving, that everyone deserved a second chance, that the man you were yesterday didn't have to be the man you'd be tomorrow. Vincent Moretti learned that at 62. James Sullivan taught it at 84. And now, decades after both had passed, their lesson lived on in every veteran who walked through those doors carrying wounds that couldn't be seen and left carrying hope they thought they'd lost forever. The little bird had learned to sing again, and his song echoed across the years, calling other broken birds home, reminding them that even the smallest, most damaged creatures could soar if someone taught them how. James Sullivan taught Vincent Moretti how to fly, and Vincent spent the rest of his life teaching others. That was the real ending. Not death, not peace, but purpose. The kind of purpose that outlives the person, that changes the world one saved life at a time. 2 soldiers, 2 wars, 1 friendship, 1 legacy, infinite second chances. And somewhere in Montana, on quiet nights, if you listen carefully, you might still hear them. The old medic and the reformed killer, laughing, talking, planning how to save one more soul who thinks they're beyond saving. Because that's what they did. That's what they do. That's what they'll always do. Save the ones everyone else has given up on. The little birds of the world. The broken. The damned. The ones who think they're monsters. Vincent thought he was a monster. James showed him he was just a man who'd made terrible choices and could still make better ones. And that message, that simple, profound message, echoes through Sullivan Moretti House every single day. You are not your worst moment. You are not beyond saving. You are not alone. Come in. Sit down. Let us tell you about 2 old soldiers who proved that redemption is real, that forgiveness is possible, that even killers can become heroes, that even the darkest souls can find light. If you're enjoying this story, please subscribe and share, because this isn't just a story. It's a reminder that everyone deserves a second chance. Everyone. No exceptions. Thanks for watching. And remember, you're never too broken to be fixed. You're never too lost to be found. You're never too far gone to come home. Welcome home, little bird. We've been waiting for you. 50 years after that night in Vietnam, 60 years after James Sullivan saved Vincent Moretti's life in the jungle, the last living member of Vincent's original squad came to Sullivan Moretti House. His name was Robert Chen. He was 91 years old, confined to a wheelchair, and he'd traveled from California with one purpose: to see where Vincent had ended up. I was there that day, Robert told the gathered veterans at dinner. His voice was thin but strong. March 1968. Khe Sanh. I watched a medic carry Vincent 3 miles through enemy fire. I thought they'd both die. But somehow, they both made it. He paused, wiping his eyes. Vincent and I lost touch after the war. I heard he'd gotten into organized crime, heard rumors about the Morettis. I thought he'd wasted the life that medic gave him. Thought he'd become exactly what we'd fought against. But then I saw the documentary, learned what really happened, how that same medic found him 40 years later and saved him again, how Vincent chose redemption over death, how they lived here together, 2 old soldiers finding peace. Robert looked around the room. I came here to see if it was true, if Vincent really changed, if the man I knew in Vietnam was still in there somewhere. The counselors showed him everything. Vincent's letter, the cabin, the grave, the hundreds of lives changed by 2 men's friendship. When the tour ended, Robert sat at Vincent's grave for over an hour. Finally, he spoke. You did good, little bird. You did real good. That medic was right about you. You were worth saving. I'm sorry I doubted that. Before Robert left, he added his own donation to Sullivan Moretti House, his entire estate, $3 million to ensure the legacy continued. Vincent gave me my life back twice, Robert explained. Once when he covered our retreat in Vietnam. Once when his story reminded me that it's never too late to do good. This is my way of paying that forward. Robert died 6 months later. His ashes were scattered at Sullivan Moretti House, joining the place where Vincent and James rested. Another soldier coming home. Another little bird finding peace. The councillors noticed something after Robert's visit. More Vietnam veterans started coming. Men in their 80s and 90s, many of them carrying guilt from a war that ended half a century ago. "I killed people," one said. "How do you come back from that?" The councillors would show them Vincent's letter, tell them his story, remind them that redemption wasn't about erasing the past. It was about building a better future. Vincent killed 17 people, they'd say. And then he saved hundreds. The math doesn't balance. It never will. But he tried. And trying matters. In 2043, on what would have been Vincent's 94th birthday, they dedicated a new wing at Sullivan Moretti House, the Little Bird Center for Moral Rehabilitation, a place specifically for veterans struggling with the moral injuries of war. Guilt, shame, the weight of things done and seen that could never be undone or unseen. The keynote speaker was unexpected. Sarah Chen, the former federal prosecutor who'd taken Antonio Moretti's bribe. She was 78 now, and she'd spent the last 20 years in and out of prison for corruption. "I'm the reason Vincent nearly killed James Sullivan," Sarah began. Her voice shook but didn't break. "My greed, my weakness, my corruption. If Vincent had followed through, if he'd killed that old man, dozens of lives would be different, worse. The veterans who found healing here would still be lost." She looked at the crowd, but Vincent made a choice, and James gave him the chance to make it. And because of that choice, I'm standing here today. Because their story inspired me to finally face what I'd done, to make amends, to try to be better. Sarah had spent her post-prison years working with organizations fighting corruption, speaking at law schools about ethics, donating every penny she made to veteran causes. "I can't undo what I did," she said. "Vincent couldn't undo what he did, but we can both try to balance the scales, try to put more good into the world than the bad we put in. That's what this place teaches. That's what Vincent and James proved. Change is possible, redemption is real, and it's never, ever too late." The crowd gave her a standing ovation, because Sullivan Moretti House wasn't just for veterans. It was for anyone carrying the weight of their worst choices, anyone seeking a second chance, anyone who needed to be reminded that they were more than their mistakes. The legacy continued. The little birds kept coming. And somewhere, in the space between memory and myth, Vincent Moretti and James Sullivan watched over them all. Two old soldiers who'd found each other against impossible odds, who'd saved each other when no one else could, who'd built something bigger than either of them. A place where broken people could heal, where killers could become saviors, where anyone, no matter how far they'd fallen, could learn to fly again. The sign at the entrance to Sullivan Moretti House had a quote from Vincent's letter. "Even the smallest creatures can survive if they remember when to sing and when to stay silent." But over the years, visitors had added their own messages below it. "I was broken. This place fixed me. I was lost. These men showed me the way home. I was a monster. They taught me I could be more. I thought I was beyond saving. I was wrong." And the most common message, written in dozens of languages by hundreds of hands: "Thank you, little bird, for showing us how to fly." Vincent Moretti came to kill a man 43 years after that man saved his life. Instead, he found redemption, found purpose, found peace. And in finding it, he created a place where thousands of others could find it too. That's the real story. Not the killing, not the crime, not even the dramatic choice in Pennsylvania. The real story is what happened after. The lives changed, the souls saved. The legacy that continues to grow decades after both men have passed. Because that's what real redemption looks like. Not a single moment of choice, but a lifetime of choices. A commitment to being better today than you were yesterday. A dedication to helping others find the light you almost couldn't find yourself. James Sullivan saved Vincent Moretti's life twice, but Vincent saved hundreds of lives after that. And those hundreds went on to save thousands. And those thousands will save millions. That's how redemption works. It ripples. It spreads. It grows. One choice, one friendship, one second chance. Infinite impact. The little bird learned to fly, and he taught others how to soar. The end. Thank you for watching this story of redemption, friendship, and second chances. If it moved you, please like, subscribe, and share. Leave a comment about a time someone gave you a second chance, or a time you gave one, because those stories matter. Those moments change everything. And remember, you're never too lost. You're never too broken. You're never beyond saving. Welcome home, little bird. We've been waiting for you.